Hello people, welcome back to an episode of DrumForestDrum Gaming. On this week's episode of Let's Talk, I thought we'd delve into the subject of the Sega Megadrive / Genesis, depending on if you're from America or not. And I couldn't think of anyone better to do this one with than my dear old big brother Gareth. Say hello, Gareth.
Hello.
Welcome to the
Hello.
show.
Thank you for having me.
And the reason I chose Gav was because the Sega Megadrive was our childhood system. It was our childhood gaming system, and we used to play it a lot.
It was our first console, the very first. I remember the day opening it, somewhere around my birthday. And it was the first game we played, and we seemed to spend. I don't really remember anything else of my childhood other than sitting on the Megadrive.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And the thing is, I don't even ever remember getting it. I just always remember it being there, you know. Like that's how young I was when we must have got it. Because I don't remember us buying it. I just remember it always just being there.
Sorry?
I don't ever remember us buying it. I always just remember it being there. That's how young I must have been. Like, it was just always there.
Yeah, I think I was like 6, so you'd have been about 3 when we first got it.
Nice. Started gaming off young. It's always the best way.
Absolutely.
So, just a little bit of history on the Sega Megadrive / Genesis. I'm going to call it the Megadrive now throughout this episode, hopefully, but just the only reason it was called the Genesis in certain parts, it was called the Genesis in America due to the fact that Sega couldn't actually get the rights to the name Megadrive in America, which I thought was quite interesting. Bit strange, but interesting. So that's why it was always called the Genesis in America, and then in Japan and Europe it was always called the Megadrive. But yeah, so the Sega Megadrive was Sega's third console and the successor to the Master System. It was an awesome 16-bit console. It was first released as the Megadrive in Japan in 1988, followed by the North American debut under the Genesis moniker in 1989, and in 1990 it was just distributed as the Megadrive by Virgin Mastertronic in Europe. And this one always made me chuckle. In South Korea, the system was actually distributed by Samsung, and it was under the name Super. It's spelled GAM * BOY, so it's Super Gam Star Boy.
Super Gamstar Boy.
Yeah,
that
so
is it.
I think it's meant to be Super Game Boy, but instead of an E, there's like a little star, which
Of course.
as they do, and then it was later updated to the name the Super Aladdin Boy.
The Super Aladdin Boy.
Yeah, as in Aladdin, as in the Disney guy.
Okay. Did it come with a free magic carpet or something?
I would certainly hope so, because that would be amazing.
That would be cool, wouldn't it?
Who hasn't wanted a magic carpet?
I don't remember mine coming with a magic carpet.
Nah, I don't remember us ever having a magic carpet.
Hmm.
So in Japan, unfortunately, the console didn't fare too well due to the fact its two main competitors were very Japanese-based, and that was the Nintendo's Super Famicom and the NEC's PC Engine. But
The Nintendo Super Famicom, did you say?
Famicom, yeah.
Nice, good name.
Did you never play the Famicom anywhere?
I never played the Famicom. No, I'm not experienced in Famicom.
Stop saying Famicom. It's Famicom, as in family computer.
Oh, okay, got you. Fair enough. That's what I thought you said.
No, Fam. FAMICOM. Famicom.
That makes a little more sense.
Smooth, Gareth, smooth. But so, although it didn't do well in Japan, or as well as it could have done, it did do exceedingly well in North America, Brazil, and Europe.
Okay.
And contributing to its success was a library of arcade game ports. So a lot of ports from the arcade games, Mortal Kombat, Golden Axe, things like that, all got brought into the Genesis Megadrive system, and it was exceedingly helpful. Obviously, they had a lot of, they had several sports game franchises, and of course, the Megadrive Sega exclusive Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog. What a game.
Hedgehog. Now, we will go into that in a moment. This one I found really interesting. Due to the controversy surrounding violent titles such as Night Trap and Mortal Kombat, Sega actually created this thing called the Video Game Rating Council, which was actually the predecessor to the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB, which we still have today, which is our games rating systems today. So I thought that was quite cool, because I always knew that things like Mortal Kombat made it so we had the rating system, but I didn't realise it was actually Sega who created the original rating council beforehand.
No, me neither. I didn't know it was them I had to blame for not being able to buy Grand Theft Auto from Woolworths when I was 15. So,
yeah, but it's okay, because
remember that.
we had Dad.
That's true. We got there eventually. There was always a way to get round it.
There was always a way. We got Dad, but, you know, providing Mum wasn't there, we were okay.
Yeah.
Mum would never have condoned such behaviour.
Absolutely not.
So the last bit of history on it is the Sega sold 30.75 million units worldwide.
That sounds like a lot, although I don't really know whether they're good figures or not. But,
well, if you think about it, when did the Sega came out? So 1988 to 1990.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about, and it was what, roughly 200 quid to buy a Sega Mega Drive?
Yeah.
If you think about also at that time where gaming isn't as big a thing, 30.75 million units is quite a lot. I would say that's very good.
Yeah. I mean, it probably had quite a long run, didn't it, as a console?
It did.
If you think about it.
Because they also had a couple of add-ons for it. In 1991, Sega released the Sega CD add-on in Japan, which allowed the system to play compact discs, because compact discs were becoming very popular.
And then did that go into the Sega Saturn? Do I remember that?
Not quite. What happened was that you had the compact discs in the Sega CD, which allowed the games to be larger, and a boost to the graphics and sound capabilities were made. And then the Sega Saturn was due to be released in 1995.
Okay.
And so there was a big kind of uproar, a lot of complaining about the fact that there was such a big gap. So what Sega did was, to try and cover that gap, they announced this thing called Sega 32X, which was to try and help with the long wait between the Sega Saturn and the Sega CD.
Okay.
But unfortunately, what happened was the Sega 32X, its release date actually ended up coinciding with the Japanese release of the Sega Saturn.
Oh, that was well worked out.
So Sega of America struggled to keep up with demands on release. So what happened was, like, I think on release, something like a million Sega 32Xs were ordered, and they were only able to produce 600,000. And it was also released at sort of holiday time as well, Christmas kind of time, I think it was. So they kind of dropped the ball on that one. But the other one they struggled with they couldn't get third-party developers to create games for it.
Which is also a problem we've seen recently with the Wii U.
It is indeed. And so it very quickly spread also that the Sega Saturn was not going to support the 32X games.
Right.
So no one wanted to create these games for a console that, when the Saturn came out, wasn't even going to play them. So eventually Sega sort of held their hands up and said, "We're really sorry, we really promised too much from this add-on," and they stopped producing it.
Fair enough.
pretty much just to focus on the Sega Saturn, and that's when the Sega Saturn came into play in about 1994, 1995, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean Sega really, they sort of started with the Mega Drive and kind of peaked with the Mega Drive when it came to home consoles. I mean, the Saturn was alright, and I seem to remember it being reasonably popular.
They had...
But compared to the Mega Drive, it wasn't.
Yeah, because I mean, they had... Because the Mega Drive was the third console. They had the Sega Master System beforehand, which was a good console. Yeah. I can't remember what the other one was off the top of my head. But then, yeah, they had the Sega Saturn, which was... I remember it being okay. We never had one, but I remember playing it and it was okay. And then, obviously, they had... Was it... The Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was Sega, and that
sort of ended Sega consoles.
It did, but fans of the Dreamcast, it was an awesome console. It unfortunately came in at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Which was a shame, because it was a really good console and it had some really good games on it. So that one was a shame, unfortunately. And yeah, that was kind of the end of Sega's console life. Now, we can't talk about Sega without talking about the Little Blue Hedgehog.
The Little Blue Hedgehog.
The Little Blue Hedgehog. Now,
this guy both made platform games for me and ruined platform games for me.
Yeah?
Yeah. Sonic 2 particularly. I mean, Sonic 1 is a good foundation, but Sonic 2, platform gaming got awesome with that.
I mean...
But I have to say, I now can never play a platform game without comparing it to Sonic 2, and I just don't enjoy it as much.
Yeah.
Even Super Mario, I'm definitely a Sonic the Hedgehog guy. I think you kind of fall into two camps.
I agree with that. I would say when it came to it back in the day, I was a Sonic the Hedgehog guy, and that's because we didn't play Mario. We didn't have the Nintendo, so we were brought up on Sonic. And I think one of the reasons why we also... Because I'm the same, I prefer Sonic 2 to Sonic 1, but I think one of the reasons why that is because we had Sonic 2 before we got Sonic 1.
Yeah,
so
that was partly it.
I think started also, with it.
There was just something more fun about having Tails with there. It did look better. Also, Sonic 1 always remember being incredibly difficult. I mean, Mega Drive games were always quite difficult anyway, and if you go back and play them, they're so much harder than games today because they had less levels.
Yeah.
But Sonic 1 always seemed to be, like, I think level 3 was good for me, whereas Sonic 2, you actually felt like completing it was at least achievable.
Yeah. I remember me and you...
once or twice.
I remember me and you always sitting there and watching Dad complete Sonic.
Yeah. Or we'd get to the last level, and then he'd have to finish it off.
Yeah, we'd be like, Dad, we can't do it. Can you finish it, please?
Yeah. I mean, I've since revisited it on my mobile phone. It's still really difficult. I'm not much better now. In fact, I'm possibly worse, but I haven't spent the hours on it. But yeah, I have it on my mobile phone. That's how much I love that game.
It is an awesome game. So, very quick bit of history on Sonic, because... I found this interesting because I didn't know this little bit of history before I researched it. I thought you might find it interesting, but due to the fact that Sega was seeking a flagship series to compete with Nintendo's Mario series, they also wanted a character to serve as a mascot. Several characters were actually submitted as part of a company-wide contest, would you believe?
All right.
I didn't know this. One of these characters was an anime-inspired egg and a teal hedgehog with red shoes, created by, and I apologize if I ruin this guy's name, Naoto Oshima, and he named it Mr. Needlemouse.
Mr. Needlemouse.
Mr. Needlemouse.
So was Sonic originally a mouse? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. And yeah, so Mr. Needlemouse won and was renamed Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic's blue pigment was chosen to match Sega's cobalt blue logo, and his shoes were a concept evolved from a design inspired by Michael Jackson's boots with the addition of the colour red.
Nice.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting, Mr. Needlemouse.
Yeah, I mean, Sonic was always quite cool. I think the reason that I picked Sonic over Mario is basically because when you're 6 years old, you're gonna pick a blue hedgehog in trainers who runs really fast over a fat plumber. And so Sonic for me was awesome and very cool. So,
Yeah.
And I've always loved Sonic because of that, really, since the beginning. He was kind of the first gaming character that you kind of really got into.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's a shame about what they've done to him now.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, no Sonic game has really come close to Sonic 2.
Sonic 3 and Knuckles was good.
I enjoyed it, but still, it was Sonic 2 is still my favourite. I mean, it remains my favourite platform game. As I say, it kind of ruined other platform games because I just can't play them and enjoy them in the same way that I got that enjoyment from Sonic 2, and still do, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So let's talk about some games, shall we?
Okay.
Since we're on the subject of Sonic, let's start with Sonic. Let's start with Sonic 1. It was released in 1991, and it holds the title for the best-selling game of the Mega Drive with over 15 million copies sold.
Did it outsell Sonic 2, did it? I'm surprised about that. I thought Sonic 2 was the more popular.
Nope, and you will be quite amazed by these numbers, actually. Sonic 2 were only sold 6 million copies. And that was the second best-selling game.
That's quite a big difference between first and second best.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's a massive difference.
It shows how important Sonic was to the Mega Drive for its success.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the difference between second and third? Do we know that?
The difference between second and third is a very good question. Sonic 3... Oh yeah, if I remember rightly, Sonic, because what you had was Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles was technically one game, but due to the size of it, they couldn't fit it, and also time constraints, they couldn't fit it on one cartridge. So between the two, between Sonic 3 and the Sonic and Knuckles games, both of them sold 4 million copies.
Nice.
But yeah.
So it all relied on Sonic, even though there were probably some really good games. Sonic was what they relied on completely then.
Pretty much. But yeah, so Sonic 2, we'll go back to Sonic 2 quickly. That was released in 1992, and that was the other thing that was awesome, was they all thought that it was a bit of a push going for Sonic 2, like, a year later. Like straight away from the first game. They thought it would be a flop. And
yeah,
it was.
I mean, it's interesting having a year in between, because nowadays that seems quite obvious that you don't have long between sequels, if you like. And between anything, we're quite an instant society now. But in those times, actually, a year in between is quite a short period of time. But the difference between them is quite amazing for the time. If you look at the colour and the graphics and just the levels and different things in there.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
there is quite a big difference and improvement, I would say.
Yeah, because I mean, in Sonic 2, it was the overall size and speed as well. The gameplay speed sped up as well. You could go a lot quicker. Yeah. Obviously, you had Tails introduced, and for all those little brothers out there, just like me, you'll know what I'm talking about. You got to play as Tails alongside the main game, and that was your role at all times.
Know your place.
We know our place. But we grew to love Tails. There was a 2-player mode, but it wasn't particularly good due to the hardware. It was quite glitchy. The frame rate dropped quite a lot, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite good though that the 1-player bit. You could, I mean, it wasn't as if you were just pretending to be Tails. You could actually have some control over him.
Yeah, like you could.
And that was quite clever.
And you could do damage to enemies and the bosses as well. Like, you couldn't keep up with Sonic, like the speed just wasn't there. But yeah, as you say, you could actually do things like when fighting bosses, you could actually hurt the bosses and things like that. So it did help on that front. The other thing that was added to Sonic 2, which was a big one, was Sonic Spin Dash, where you could curl up on the floor and spin around.
Yes,
and this,
which was always very useful.
This was the biggest issue I found when the fact that we had Sonic 2 before Sonic 1, was that when me and you then tried to play Sonic 1, we couldn't spin. We couldn't do that, so we were just sat there going, why can't I do this? It's not working.
All he'd do is
it'd curl up.
Knees.
Yeah, it'd curl up, tuck in his knees, and he'd sit there, and you'd think, oh, it's not going to help you, is it, mate?
No.
But yeah, so Sonic 2 was awesome, loved it. So then we come on to Sonic 3, released in 1994. This one introduced the temporary shield maneuver, where you got the fire, electric, and bubble shields, and they all had like a particular maneuver, which was quite cool. And it also introduced the new character Knuckles the Echidna,
who was quite a cool character himself.
He was, and in Sonic 3, he was a bad guy, if you remember. Like,
I don't have a great recollection of Sonic 3.
In Sonic 3, he was an additional antagonist alongside Dr. Robotnik. Like, the story was that Dr. Robotnik tricked him into thinking that you were the bad guy as Sonic, and so he stole all your Chaos Emeralds at the beginning and stuff. And then at the end, right at the end of the game, he realizes, oh no, Dr. Robotnik's the bad guy. And that's when it leads into Sonic and Knuckles, which was also released in 1994. As I said before, it was the second half to Sonic 3, and due to the time constraints and the fact that it was a massive game for the time period, they couldn't fit it on a cartridge. But it was also the first game you could play as Knuckles. That's when you got to be that cool echidna with dreadlocks. Yeah.
I've got to say, I think Knuckles is possibly the weirdest choice of animal ever.
Well, I mean, if you...
Like, for a character, when they were sat in their Sega offices going, we've got this new character, we're going to make him a bad guy. What screams bad guy? I know, an echidna. That is an extreme bad guy.
Well, I mean, to be fair, their main bad guy against... And if you think about it, you're playing as an anthropomorphic animal in the fact you're a blue hedgehog, and they immediately thought, you know what, our main bad guy for all of this is going to be a fat scientist.
Yeah, which is pretty... I mean, also, what's even more ridiculous, if you think about the animal kingdom here, the hedgehog's best friend is a fox.
Yeah, I mean...
Now, just throwing it out there, maybe Tails should have been the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, foxes, I'm pretty sure, go for hedgehogs.
Yeah, far more than probably fat scientists do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not familiar with the fat scientist community, so maybe they do have something against hedgehogs.
Maybe.
That I don't know about.
Occasionally, if you look really carefully in the middle of the night, you'll see them running across the bushes in their lab coats.
With their pet echidnas in hand.
So yeah, the other thing that was cool about Sonic and Knuckles is that it was a cartridge that had a lid on it, and you could put you could put Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 in it and play as Knuckles on them two games. Which, due to the fact that obviously Knuckles with his fisticuffs, his awesome spiked hands, for whatever reason they work, he can climb. So when you go and play Sonic 2, you can climb up all these bits you didn't do before, and it was really cool. Kind of opened up the game a load for you.
It did, actually. You found things that you were like, well, how was I ever supposed to get that as Sonic the Hedgehog in Sonic 2? But yeah, it worked, and you could fly as well. I remember.
Yeah, glide.
It
was gliding. You slowly went to the floor, but yeah, you would glide, which was also pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will happily admit to, like obviously throughout these games you can get the Chaos Emeralds and become Supersonic. I was never good enough to get all the Chaos Emeralds.
No, it was always quite tough. And the thing was, what was bad about it was whenever you went into those little sort of mini games, you lost your rings. And so it was always a case of, do I go for this emerald and risk losing the 140 rings that I've collected over this level, or not? And So often I didn't. So no, I never got to that stage.
Yeah, I think the only...
Also, when you're 7 and 8 years old, you just don't have the patience.
No, you don't. You just don't care, do you? You're like, do you know what?
No.
Especially since you also didn't actually know that if getting them all meant you could be supersonic. That was the other thing. Like me and you used to get these emeralds and didn't know what they were for. Didn't know that they made you supersonic.
No, I'm not sure we had internet at that stage, so it's the sort of thing.
I mean, internet wasn't really a thing then, was it? Yeah. I mean, you would only...
Even if we had internet, we had to dial up, so it would have taken about 3 hours to find out that piece of information.
Yeah. So the next one, just a quick one. This one, another Sonic game. The last Sonic game I'm going to touch on very quickly was Sonic Spinball, which was released in 1993. Do you ever remember playing this?
I remember that feeling like the death of Sonic the Hedgehog. I hated it.
I didn't mind it. It was okay. It was pretty much, for anyone out there who doesn't know, it was pinball with Sonic.
Yeah, and it just really felt like they were milking this little blue hedgehog for all they possibly could.
Yeah, no, I'd agree on that one. It was quite funny. It was quite funny.
So, I mean, hey, they probably sold copies. They probably made money out of it.
Probably.
But yeah.
And I think I'm going to call it there, purely because it has coming up to a long one. So I'm going to split this episode in two, guys. I know that's 2 episodes in a week. I've split in 2, but it's because these subjects have been so long that I just keep talking about them. What can I say? So me and Gaff will join you again next week, where we continue our discussion on the amazing console that is the Sega Megadrive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Take it easy.